Okay, so starting next week, we're going to be meeting, next month, the month of May, we're going to move the times to 6 p.m. Central Standard Time instead of 7, just because for some people, the earlier time zones work in different parts of the country. So I decided I would just do a little bit of a change and do 6 p.m. instead of 7. So that will start in May. Our gathering place will start this month, will start at 6 p.m. the last Wednesday of each month, as we indicated in the previous sessions. So every first Monday of the month, we meet for Q&A on different subject matters. Most importantly, right now, we're focusing on anxiety. Not that the other things are important, but we want to make sure that we are covering the anxiety pieces in all the different aspects, and then we will focus on a different topic as well. Starting this month for the gathering place, we're going to have speakers every single month, hopefully, if the calendar works out the way that I want it to, on different topics. So for the gathering place for the end of April, the last Wednesday of April, is going to be on dealing with anxiety, depression, and addiction and coping strategies. So we have a expert coming in to talk about how people with anxiety and depression can end up using drugs and alcohol as a coping mechanism, which many people do, and how that can impact their overall mental health and how it works in the system. So that's going to be the last Wednesday of April. And that's our speaker for then. So for tonight, we have more questions that came in that we've prepared a PowerPoint as usual for the Q&A, just so it's easier for you to follow along. And so we will get started with that. And again, if the link is always the same for the Q&A for each and every month. Okay, so the first question that I want to address that someone brought in to us in our client sessions, and or these questions come from a various variety of people and venues. So sometimes I'll have a client that I'm working with that asks a specific question and we put it on here, or someone will submit a question. You can always submit your questions on the website, and we can answer it on our Q&A that month. Or you always have the option of getting on a 15-minute free call just to see where and how I may be able to help support you as a coach. That call is free, so don't hesitate to reach out and just use the link in the website to be able to book a 15-minute call. Okay, so let's get started. What role does mindfulness play in managing anxiety, and how can I practice it effectively? This question often comes in about mindfulness. So there's different answers that I provide as well. So how it can play a significant role is by helping individuals become more aware of their thoughts and feelings and bodily sensations in the present moment without judgment. And I know I've mentioned before that when we're in the moment of anxiety, we have that fight, flight, or freeze, but we also have bodily sensations that make us feel that way, that make us feel like we have to respond in the moment. So when we take a step back and look at it more from a objective view and say, what's happening in my body right now, instead of feeling like we have to respond, there's two things that we often do. We either react or we respond. Big difference. Think about something in your personal life where you were upset about something, maybe a partner said a comment, or you're upset at work with a coworker, and you just want to you didn't take the moment to absorb what was going on, and you reacted. And I always say there's a big difference. Reacting is when we don't give ourselves time to be mindful of what's going on, and we just react rather than respond. Responding is taking a step back and just thinking about it, processing it more, to be able to come up with a logical answer or a response without letting anger or anxiety or frustration, fear fuel our response role, right? And we can all think of a time, I'm guessing for all of us out there tonight listening, is that there has been a time when we have reacted. Now, some people's personalities are such that they are more introverted, more laid back, more of a reactor versus more of a responder than a reactor. But for some of us, we go to the reaction first and foremost. So if people like the reactors are more mindful of what they're thinking and processing the information, the outcome can be significantly different and more positive rather than conflict or resentment or bitterness or regret or regret that they responded in that way. Now, this is not an easy thing to do. Sometimes it takes a lot of energy and practice, but I'm here to say that with time, I've seen many clients be able to overcome their reaction and be able to respond by the tools that we use in the programs that I offer. So let me just go on to say that was a big answer, and I'm not even at the answer yet. So let me go on to answer the question. Here's how it can be helpful to be mindful. We increase our awareness, we reduce our reactivity, and we reduce our stress. That's a big one, because we are responsible for the response that we give and the way that it impacts our life. So we can choose to carry around that anxiety and anger sometimes and resentment, or we can decide to let it go. And that's another subject matter that we're going to have in the gathering place, is someone speaking on the importance of letting go, because we hold this inside our body and it's like a heavy weight and anchor a lot of times our feelings and emotions, and it's destructive. So we need to have cognitive restructuring, and this is where I help people challenge their thought patterns and be able to have choices in how they respond. And then there's the emotional regulation. If we're able to be mindful, it calms our body, mind, and soul. So how do we practice it? There are different ways to practice the mindfulness for managing our anxiety, and one of them is breathing. Another speaker that we're going to have on from Hawaii, a friend of mine that is actually a breathing coach, believe it or not, where her approach to breathing is much different than the norm of what we're learned and taught how to breathe. And she's actually been the coach for breathing techniques with different filmmakers and actors and actresses. So we will have her on, I'm hoping, in the next coming month, a few months. So mindful breathing is important to focus our attention, because what it does, it doesn't just help calm our central nervous system by allowing the breaths in and out, but it also allows us to settle our entire body as we do it, and we get better at it. And the nice thing about breathing is we can do it anywhere. And when we practice it in the comfort of our home, as I always say, and get really good at it, we can be anywhere and use that approach, and people won't even be aware that we're doing it. And it serves as an anchor to bring your attention back to the present moment. So if you're breathing, but not just breathing shallow or breathing randomly, if you're mindfully breathing, like taking in the breaths and breathing and being mindful of breathing in and breathing out, that's the difference, because we are actually training our brains to be aware of what we are doing in the moment. Another one is the body scan, focusing your attention on different parts of your body. Some like to start from the toes up, and some like to start from the head down. But when we focus on these certain body scans, it's focusing your attention on different parts of your body. So you could actually imagine a scanner going from your toes, gradually moving up to your head, and just being aware of any areas that you feel tension or discomfort, and allowing them to soften with each breath that you take in and out. It's more of a visual tool, this one. And not all of us are visual. I happen to be a visual person where I can actually visualize. When I was working on my anxiety, could visualize being somewhere where it was calming and comforting. And that could be anywhere. It could be in the woods, it can be on an ocean, it could be on the sand, it could be in the snow, the rain, whatever it is for you. And another one is the mindful meditation. So this is where we intentionally, and I use that word strongly, we intentionally set aside each day for formal meditation practices during which you can sit quietly and observe your thoughts and sensations without getting caught up in them. And this is good because it gives us an opportunity to allow those thoughts in without responding to them. And then we up the duration as we go through the course of weeks and sometimes months. People need time to adjust to that and get comfortable doing the mindful meditations. And then the mindful movements. This is something that not everyone considers or is aware of, but we engage in activities like yoga, Tai Chi. I know yoga is more popular for some communities and some people, but Tai Chi, I've had clients that really value the ability to do Tai Chi. And then some people just do things on their own, like I mentioned earlier, walking meditations. And here again, we're paying close attention to the physical sensations and movements involved. And they can help ground us in the present moment. And I know that I've used the word grounding before. If you just think of grounding as an opportunity to be present, like feel your feet on the ground, feel yourself in the moment and grounded so you feel that present energy. And it helps to also promote relaxation. Eating. How many of us have just eaten? Like we just eat and eat and eat, and we don't really enjoy the food. And I think that a lot of this eating without being mindful, for me, I feel that it stems from our lifestyle. Sometimes at work, we're in a hurry and we only have 15-minute break or 10 minutes, or people say I had to eat on the run. How many of us have done drive-through, eating through drive-through? A lot of times when we eat, I feel like our eating comes from um, ways of convenience. So fast food, food that's already prepared, marinated, in boxes, microwaved. If you think of all the ways that people are promoted to eat and how society deems eating as a way of being. I think about skip the dishes. I sit in a restaurant sometimes and I actually count how many people from skip the dishes comes into that restaurant in the hour that I might be there. And one time I think I counted 8 or 9 skip the dishes people. So that tells us that our society, again, in this way, is looking for immediate gratification, immediate fix. Let's do this quick and fast, and it should be something that we look forward to and that we engage in. So even being mindful when we eat, slowing down and savoring each bite of your meal, like taking the food into your mouth and actually chewing it and being mindful of the texture, maybe the flavor, the taste, the smells, paying attention to all those things and how it relates to your body and the sensations in your body. This will not only enhance your enjoyment, but also encourage mindfulness, encourage mindful awareness in all other activities. When you're walking, when you're spending time with loved ones or friends, how it feels. So really just slowing down and being mindful of the things we do and how we're responding to them. I hope that makes sense. And again, if you have any questions, feel free to put in the chat. Then for us who may not have such creative minds or be able to do it on our own, there's always people that can guide us. And in today's society, there's tons of apps we can use. There's guided mindfulness where someone with a soft-spoken voice will come through and tell you exactly what to do at what time. Breathe in, breathe out, imagine this, go there, put this together, tense up, release, whatever it might be. And that you can find, there's endless amounts of apps and online videos. So again, these provide structure and support for your mindfulness practice, especially in the beginning, because we don't always know what to do. And I feel that in the beginning, for people, when I'm coaching them, I encourage them to do it on a gradual process, because a lot of times we need that time to practice, because our minds are so wound up and moving at such a rapid pace, because that's the way our brain has been conditioned to work. So to try to go to the opposite end of the continuum and be mindful of everything, it's not easy to do. So if we can work out gradually, just like when we're putting together tailor-made programs for exposure, when I'm working with someone to help them with their tailor-made program to work on their anxiety, we have a very gradual process to that, where we start with the lowest anxiety and then we build up and so on. It's much the same with mindfulness, finding things that work and doing things in increments and chunking it down so it's effective for you. Okay, so let's move on to the next question. How can I address what if thoughts and catastrophic thinking patterns associated with anxiety? Oh boy, this what if. Those are probably two of the most common words that are in our vocabulary when we live with anxiety and OCD. What if? And the what if is different for everyone. So let's talk about that a little bit more. Addressing what if thoughts and catastrophic thinking patterns associated with anxiety involve the CBT strategies that I always talk about, that I'm passionate about. And for those of you listening for the first time, when we say CBT, that's cognitive behavioral therapy. So what we have to be able to do is use the cognitive behavioral strategies aimed at challenging and reframing our negative thinking patterns. And again, the brain automatically is programmed to go to negative thought patterns. So unless we intentionally train our brains to think differently, then our brains will go back to the old behaviors. Just like anything else in our life, if we're conditioned to do something a certain way, unless we take the time to change those patterns, they will remain the same, good or not so good. So how do we do that? Because again, it's easier said than done, right? And with the what if, it often leads to catastrophic thinking. So people don't usually stop at, well, what if this happens? And then fill in the blank. We go on to think, what if this happens then? And then we go on to a catastrophic outcome. So maybe I can use an example of catastrophic thinking. I've used this before, but I'm trying to think of one. I'll use this one. When my anxiety and OCD was so severe that I could not drive because of the fear of hitting someone or getting in an accident, I would reach out to other people to help me to take me somewhere. But my catastrophic thinking in that way was, what if, and I'll finish that sentence for you, what if when that person takes me to get groceries, we get in an accident and someone dies? It's all my fault. So that's a catastrophic thought pattern. So I was very hesitant to reach out for help, even in the worst of times when I was that debilitated, because I automatically assumed that if we went out on an errand and it was my responsibility to make sure that nothing bad happened. So again, there's that what if, right? Okay, so we're going to spend a few moments just talking about what if thoughts and catastrophic thinking patterns, because this is so essential in how it impacts our anxiety on many levels. So recognizing and labeling the thought. So everything starts by becoming aware. I always say that knowledge is potential power. It's what we do with the knowledge that is going to be the game changer. So if we start by becoming aware of when, what, if thoughts or these catastrophic thinking patterns arise, then we can start changing it. Unless we know it's happening or we stop it, it will continue to be so, right? So notice the specific thoughts that trigger your anxiety and label them as such. So then when we acknowledge that they are just thoughts and not necessarily reflections of reality, then we can continue doing the opposite of what our brain is telling us to do or not do. So in times like that, I would often say, well, I'm not going to ask anyone to take me out because it's going to happen, right? And then when I was able to recognize it just as being simply a thought and not a reality, then I could change my choices and be able to move forward and live with that uncertainty. Another one is challenging the evidence. Sometimes we have to put it on trial, as I would say. Ask yourself, what evidence supports? Think of it as in a courtroom. This is no different. I use my imagination and say, okay, let's put these negative what if thoughts on trial. Let them stand at the front in front of the judge and the jury, and let's ask them, what evidence supports the catastrophic thoughts you're having? And often you'll find that there's little or no concrete evidence to justify them. So challenging that validity of these thoughts by considering alternative, more realistic interpretations of the situation will come, and they will. I love seeing my clients working on their challenging faulty belief systems, because even the power it has, writing it down, writing the challenging thought and be able to look at it more realistic helps a lot to empower people to know that they have choices. And then the probability, asking what's the likelihood of the worst case scenario occurring? And then ask yourself how probable it is that the feared outcome will come to pass. In many cases, you're actually going to find that catastrophic thoughts are based on exaggerated or irrational fears rather than objective reality. And even if the worst case scenario happens, I ask my clients, are you willing to live with that worst case scenario? And you know what? A lot of times people can say, yeah, I've been trying to push it away for so long and not want to have those thoughts. But let's start talking about the worst case scenario. And then let's see if we can live with them. I've always been a big believer in being able, ever since I started therapy like 29 years ago, that if we start challenging it, it's not so scary. And if we start having the open discussions, because it's when we keep it up here and in our brain and in our hearts and our souls, that's what is toxic to us. And if we can start verbalizing it and expressing it in emotions, then it doesn't have the power. It loses the power that it once had over us. Okay, and then I like to examine past experiences based on what the person's going through with their anxiety or their OCD and or their depression. We reflect on past experiences when they face similar situations and examine how things turned out at that time. And sometimes people will say to me, yeah, but it's way different this time. It's worse. Like it's worse than ever. And I answer that comment often with, it's worse because the anxiety is heightened. Your anxiety and your thought pattern has become worse. Therefore, the outcomes now will feel worse. So getting back to the answer, did the feared outcome actually happen in the past, or did things work out differently? And then we use those experiences as evidence to counteract catastrophic thinking and allow the person to gain and build the confidence in their ability to cope now in the moment. We talked about mindfulness. Mindfulness is a bit being present, being in the moment, but we also have to be moment in the moment, bringing our past into the moment and saying, this is now. And a lot of times people will reflect and say, you know what? Yeah, well, last time this happened, it didn't turn out to be so bad. So there's different ways and strategies that we use based on what specifics are involved in the what if. So I hope that helps. And then we focus on the present. We shift our focus away from hypothetical future scenarios and bring ourselves back to the present moment, because we don't have any other moment, do we? We don't have yesterday. Yesterday's done and gone. Happy Easter, by the way. And tomorrow isn't here. We only have today. And so we need to cherish the moment. And we engage in mindfulness techniques, so like we talked about, the breathing, the grounding exercise, to anchor ourselves in the here and now. And this will reduce the power of anxious thoughts to hijack your attention, because that's what we're being done. That's being done. We're getting hijacked. We're getting kidnapped by our thoughts. And that's not a good feeling, is it? To think about that. So we need to focus on the here and now and challenge our cognitive distortions. If we can identify and challenge common cognitive distortions, such as catastrophizing, or the black and white thinking. How many of you have heard of black and white thinking? No gray matter. Like we think either on this end of the continuum or this end, black and white, no gray. And we overgeneralize. So replacing these distorted, replacing these distorted thoughts with more balanced and realistic interpretations of the situation will help us in the long run to be able to look at future events, future what if thoughts a lot different than we are currently. And then we practice thought replacements. And this is sometimes hard to do. So having a coach, having someone in your arena helping you to be able to recognize this and move past it is really beneficial. So once you've identified and challenged those thoughts, we need to replace them with more adaptive and empowering alternatives. So instead of thinking, what if everything goes wrong? You could reframe it as, even if things go wrong as planned, I have the skills and resources to handle challenges as they arrive. So let's just think about that. If we just say to ourselves, have you ever considered saying this to yourself? What if everything goes wrong? You could reframe it and say, even if things don't go as planned, I have the skills and resources to handle challenges as they arise. That is powerful. Now, obviously, you have to have those resources and have practice and have those skills. You can't just say it without believing it, right? You want to have the confidence in saying that. Okay, and cultivate self-compassion. Be kind, compassionate with yourself when confronting anxious thoughts. It is natural, though, right, to experience worry and uncertainty at times, and that's all right. But where we get hijacked, where we get trapped with it, is it's repetitive. It's the go-to. It's our go-to in our brain that always is triggering more anxiety, more hypervigilance, more uncertainty. So let's ditch the uncertainty and treat ourselves with the same kindness and understanding you would offer to a friend in a similar situation. And of course, always support. Talk to someone you can trust. That could be a family member, it may not be. Your family members maybe not the people that you would trust because of past situations and outcomes. It might be a friend or a mental health professional. It might be a counselor that you're currently working on or seeking out to work with. And talk to them about your thoughts and how they're affecting you. Sometimes just expressing our concerns aloud and saying it out loud can help put them into perspective and provide ourselves reassurance. Okay, so I'm just going to pause there and see if there's any questions. Hey, another question. Great question. Every question is a great question because it's giving you opportunity to bring clarity to your life. So don't be afraid to ask questions. And this is a question that I like to answer as a coach. What strategies can I use to build my self-esteem and confidence while managing anxiety? Well, my simple answer is building self-esteem and confidence while managing anxiety involves a combination of CB strategies, cognitive behavioral strategies, self-care practice, and gradual exposure to anxiety-provoking situations. Let's do this. Let's conquer anxiety gradually, so that we have success with our achievements and we have long-term success with our achievements. We need to start by setting ourselves realistic goals. Again, trying to conquer too much too quickly will be overwhelming and we will not be able to achieve sustainable results. So let's do it gradually, chunk it down, achievable steps, and celebrate our progress along the way. Success in reaching these milestones can actually boost your confidence and sense of self-worth, and again, have sustaining results. So if you'd like to learn more about that and have support in that, again, reaching out and getting on a call, we can even look at that in a broader sense of what's going on and how to help you with your anxiety goals. Negative self-talk. Oh boy, we do this on a daily basis, most of us. Whether we live with anxiety or not, often people are going to resort to negative self-talk. So pay attention to self-critical thoughts and challenge them with more realistic and compassionate alternatives. So again, it goes back to reframing our negative beliefs about ourselves into positive affirmations. So let's talk about negative self-talk. If we're self-critical and our thoughts are self-critical and we want to start challenging those thoughts, then we have to be able to learn positive self-affirmations, such as we are enough. We are enough right here in the moment, right here, right now. And we will work on getting better as the days progress. But just being in the moment to know that you are enough is comforting and can hold a lot of belief and instill a lot of belief in your future. Let's focus on strengths, identifying your strengths, talents, and achievements. Because when we're in that negative mindset, we don't see our strengths. We don't think sometimes we have talents or achievements. So we need to remind ourselves of those. Maybe using sticky notes, putting these sticky notes all around your house, put them in the car, remind yourself, put them in your knapsack, your purse, just a small little quote that's going to inspire you to continue moving forward and engage in activities that allow you to showcase your abilities and develop your strengths. Okay, because that's really important to boost your confidence in your abilities and self-compassion. I want to ask you, what have you done lately to treat yourself with kindness and understanding, especially when facing challenges or setbacks? If you stop for a moment and think, have you actually treated yourself with anything that pertains to kindness or understanding, especially when you're feeling anxious? It's important to cultivate a mindset of self-compassion by acknowledging your humanity and embracing your imperfections, because we all have them. But let's start learning now that we can embrace our imperfections, and it can result in freedom for each and every one of us. If we can develop coping skills, like we talked about with the mindfulness and the progressive muscle relaxation, we will be able to manage more effectively our anxiety symptoms. So, creating a toolbox. A toolbox is something, picture it, okay, let's look at it this way. I don't know, people come from many different backgrounds, but think of a toolbox as something that you can carry around like you carry a purse or a knapsack. And the toolbox is filled with things that you can open up and you can just draw out and utilize and implement various coping strategies to increase your confidence in your ability to handle the stressful situations. So I imagine carrying, if you want to just for a moment, think about that, carrying a toolbox around, and in that toolbox are your most precious coping strategies. And you know that in a time of need that you can open up that toolbox, reach in either visually or feel around and know what exactly you need out of that toolbox to pull out and utilize to increase your confidence in your ability to handle stressful situations. I don't think we'd ever let go of that toolbox because that's our ammunition. And if we're going to overcome anxiety, we need to start armoring up with our coping strategies and never leaving the toolbox at home. Okay, so if we seek social support with supportive people, and or a therapist, ideally you want to work with a specialist because your supportive friends and family are only going to know so much. And here's what I say about that. Seeking social support is important to keep sustainable results and momentum going in your life, and encouragement and feeling like you belong. But there's limits to what a friend or a supportive family member can do for you, with you, as you journey on this journey of anxiety. But where a specialized therapist, coach, supportive counselor comes in and helps on a professional level, this is where some of the things that may be missed in the way of support in other realms can come into play, and we can serve as an objective perspective on your situation, and we can help you to feel less isolated, to feel more powerful in being able to have the coping strategies to utilize in times of need. And it will also boost your self-esteem, right? And then where do we go as far as bringing you joy and fulfillment? Again, it's so personalized. If you want to participate in certain activities that bring you joy, you need to find things that you have interests in. And sometimes living with anxiety, we have lost interest in the things that once fulfilled us. And if we take a step back and we say, wait a minute, there was a time in my life where I enjoyed hobbies. I pursued hobbies, whether it be volunteering, helping others, engaging in meaningful activities, which all did enhance your self-esteem and confidence at one time. Now that's lost. We need to revisit that and look at ways that you can get connected back into the things in your life that provided you happiness and joy. So again, unless you're able to work through the anxiety, you may never go back to those hobbies or interests. So it's important that we start challenging the anxiety so you feel empowered to do things that once brought you joy and happiness. And assertiveness. We've talked in the past in our sessions about being selfish to be selfless. Now, assertiveness has that same connotation as selfishness for many people, because we look at assertiveness as being rude or being mean, or that people won't like us. But assertively communicating our needs, preferences, and boundaries in your relationship and interactions with others is very key and vital in being able to overcome anxiety. So standing up for ourselves and advocating for your interests can boost your self-esteem and actually reduce your anxiety in the long run. Now, the next one is challenging perfectionism. Who can ever achieve perfectionism? Perfectionism is unattainable, and that mistakes are a natural part of learning and growth, right? So having mistakes, not doing things 100% right, actually allows us to learn and grow from those mistakes. So we need to embrace imperfection and view failures as opportunities for growth and self-improvement. And gradual exposure. Again, the key word in exposure is gradual, because gradual exposure and exposing yourself to anxiety-provoking situations or activities that will challenge your comfort zone will help make small steps towards success. And it will start small, and the manageable steps will gradually increase, and the level of exposure will increase as you build confidence in your ability to cope. As a coach, when I'm working with individuals, I often include the family and loved ones in an educational session for what is important that they know about the journey, living and working and supporting someone alongside their anxiety. But I don't have that meeting necessarily till the person that I'm coaching has gained some wins and celebrated some victories and wins in their exposure process, because it is so rewarding to see them gain confidence in themselves. And I know that anybody here listening can have the same result. It just takes courage, it takes time, and it takes the ability to know that there is an alternative to answering your anxiety by answering and giving into it. And that is challenging it. And we can only challenge it through CBT, which is the number one therapy. And within that therapy, the number one technique, which is exposure response prevention. Acknowledging and celebrating the accomplishments, no matter how small they are, and recognizing the success reinforces that positive self-esteem, like we talked about, and confidence in our abilities. Because once we do something once, we know we can do it again and again. Excuse me. Okay, the next question that came in, are there specific hobbies or activities that can provide relief from anxiety symptoms? So now we're talking specifically on hobbies and activities. So again, relaxation, distraction, and a sense of fulfillment are important in order to obtain that. So again, walking, jogging, swimming, these are just some recommendations. Help lower the anxiety system by releasing endorphins. You know, we often talk about the feel-good endorphins that are released when we jog or when we run or we walk or just being out in nature. Our body releases naturally these endorphins. And this, a lot of times my clients will say they feel a lot better when they go out and they just move. And part of our coaching and part of the tailor-made program is cutting out a portion of their day to make sure that they're out and doing something that they enjoy. And you know, it happens to all of us. We can get so caught up in our day-to-day life, and then at the end of the day, we're too exhausted to do an activity. So I would recommend, as I do with all the clients I work with, is set aside, carve out time every day, even if it's 20 minutes, half an hour, and just move. Make your move. I call it make your move. Move to another room, move ideally outside, move to some place where you can practice these. And it will help with the mood and promote relaxation. And start small with that, just like everything else we do. We start gradual, maybe a 10-minute walk, 20 minutes, ideally 20 to start, and then build up from there. If you've got a Fit app, like an app that you can record your steps, if you want to do that. I know when I started, I thought, oh, 1,000 steps. I'd never be able to do 1,000 steps. Then I went from 1,000 to 2,000. Then there was a point where I said, there's no way I'm not going back until I've done 5,000. It's setting the expectation. And if you set the bar and the standard higher and higher, then your brain will be programmed to achieve that. And then we've talked already about mindfulness and meditation, but how it impacts us on the body and mind. There's been lots of studies that say it definitely can calm the mind and reduce stress, and even bring us increased self-awareness by providing us relief from those anxiety symptoms. Not all of us are artsy. Some of us, when we think of art, we think of artists that paint these beautiful paintings, but it can be a color paint by number. It can be, we've got lots of those coloring books for adults that we can color. And don't worry about coloring inside or outside the line. Just make it do your thing, right? I know in school we always were programmed to say you can't color outside the line, and that would make me anxious because I'd think, what if my crayon slips outside the line? So just color and have no expectations of what the outcome should look like. Some of us turn music on, take us back in time, play music from an era that you remember that brings you back to good times, and crank it up. Go for a drive and play music. many different things that can help as outlets for expression and creativity. So it also gives you a distraction from thinking, because if we're left to our own brains, we spend so much time thinking about things, and this will ultimately promote relaxation. Okay, we can probably, for those of, I know some of the people that join us are from California, from the southern states, sometimes from the West Coast, the East Coast. But I'm glad to talk about this next one as a opportunity, because us here in the colder climates in Canada, gardening isn't something that we have access to year round. So spending time outdoors gardening or tending to plants can have a calming effect on the mind. This is one of my most favorite ones. And now what I've started doing in recent years is I start gardening in the house in preparation for spring, so that I can use that as a form of therapy and just be in there and be in the mud and the soil, and it's just so mindless. So it's a beautiful opportunity to help calm our mind and reduce stress levels and provide a sense of accomplishment and connection with nature. Reading a good book can also provide a temporary escape. So we're looking at things, there's a common thread here too, that the things that we participate in when we're having anxiety is an outlet for us to take our mind and our focus of attention on something else other than our thought patterns. So when you're reading, if you're reading, you want to make sure it's a good book. It's a temporary escape from anxious thoughts and worries and allows for relaxation and enjoyment. And we need breaks in our days so that we have things that take our mind off of the anxiety. And pet therapy, for all our pet lovers, you will know exactly how important and how this has impacted your ability to overcome anxiety at times. Our pets love us unconditionally, and it is such a powerful presence that animals can bring to us. And this is an area, even with OCD, for people who have contamination fears. I've had people actually consider buying pets, and they have been so grateful that they have, because their pet is often, of course, you can't control where their paws go and what people are petting them. So this is a great form of therapy, not just for the reasons that we're talking about here with anxiety, but also to overcome many types of OCD subtypes. It works phenomenal. So if you can't have a pet for whatever reason, maybe you're in an apartment, maybe you have a spouse that doesn't like pets, or you don't necessarily want to own a pet, or there's allergies, whatever the reason is, look outside and beyond your current living conditions. Maybe you go to an animal shelter or observe wildlife, look at a magazine or a YouTube video or a TV show on it. This can also help anxiety symptoms by feelings of comfort, companionship, and connection. I was on a plane once, boarding a plane, and there was a young couple in front of me, and they had this huge dog, like it was a full-size dog. And I asked her, is this your pet therapy, your animal therapy? And she said, yes. And I said, so your dog gets to sit on a plane and have his own seat? And she said, yes. And it was WestJet that offered that service to her. And it just brought just tears and joy to my mind, because I thought, wow, just having that dog present beside her to give her comfort. I didn't ask any personal questions in the way of what she was living with, but you can guarantee that part of it was her anxiety, and just having that dog beside her calmed her anxiety on the idea of flying. So it was really nice to see. And cooking or baking, as long as you follow the recipe. And engaging in cooking or baking, again, therapeutic, enjoyable. You can do it with friends, you can do it with family, or just by yourself. It helps to distract from anxiety as well, and gives you a sense of accomplishment, providing the cookies or whatever you're baking turns out, right? And even if it doesn't, it was sometimes just nice to have that outlet. And listening to music, as we talked about again. it gives a welcome distraction from anxiety. For those of you who do like hiking, camping, going for a walk, again, in our province, in our part of the country in Canada, we now can look at, they're actually booking reservations. You can make reservations for camping now. So again, depending on your type of anxiety, we talked in the past Q&As about specific phobias. Maybe people are afraid of spiders or bees or wasps. This may not be a choice that you make, but we've given you lots of many opportunities in other ways as well. So we have to respect that not all of these will fit into the boxes of everybody listening tonight or in the future. So pick and choose what will work for you. And then there's puzzle games, jigsaw puzzles, crossword puzzles, Sudoku. It's all of these types of games require you to focus your time and energy into thinking about what's going on instead of diverting back to your anxious thoughts. Okay, so how can we address the feeling of isolation that sometimes comes with anxiety? Have any of you felt isolated because of your anxiety? Isolation often accompanies anxiety and involves both practical, being able to address it involves both practical steps to connect with others and psychological strategies to manage the feelings of loneliness. So here are some effective ways to address the feelings of isolation, because isolation is real. Many times as a coach, people will comment that they feel very isolated, even when they're in a room surrounded by other people and other things going on, they still feel very alone. So how can you manage it? One of the first steps is reaching out to supportive individuals. So again, friends, and sometimes support groups will be an option, depending on the individual and what type of anxiety you're living with. Sometimes support groups is not effective initially. And what do I mean by that is I've had several people that I coach with that I've asked them what has been their lifeline, what have been their supports up to this point when we start working together. And sometimes people will say, I've joined support groups and it's actually caused my anxiety to get worse. And I'm not against support groups, but I think support groups, a person has to be at the point where the readiness is there to engage in a support group. So we have to be mindful of where someone's at. And I feel there's a lot of benefits of support groups, but the timing is very important as to when someone joins a support group. Because support groups can be very understanding and non-judgmental. And so it can provide a lot of support to a person and makes them feel heard, respected, and invited to share with other people. So by sharing your feelings, this can give you a lot of comfort and validation as well. So maybe you yourself would like to consider joining a support group at this point in time, or even an online community where you can connect with others who are experiencing similar challenges with anxiety. And you know what, when people talk about connecting online virtually, not everyone's comfortable being part of a group, even virtually. It may be difficult to have their cameras on. It might be difficult for them to speak. So again, putting it into the context in which it is, being mindful of that people don't always feel that way. So often people will come to me, if they aren't comfortable with that, I will reach out with the 15-minute call. And then sometimes people want their first session when they join a program of mine that I've created. They sometimes want their first call to be a phone call, but very quickly we learn and build that trust so that a person will start coming on Zoom and we can actually correspond and be able to see each other. But it doesn't always start that way. So I just want to put that out there as well. And then, of course, seeking help is really important for guidance, validation, and coping strategies. So we've talked about different ways that people can support us. When the timing is right, being able to join and engage in social activities or group settings that align with your interests and preferences is a really great idea to start planning and having some structured activity in your life. So anything that might be of interest to you, even taking a chance on something that you've never done before. You may think you're not interested and find out that it becomes your passion. So again, finding those things, looking through the local paper or online to see events near you, and just engaging in something, just start the process. That's really what it comes down to, is starting the process. And stay connected. In this day and age, we have so many platforms, social platforms, that allow us to stay connected. They're not all wonderful. They're not all pertinent or credible sources. So make sure that you're using something you feel comfortable with. But I always say technology should not replace face-to-face interactions, but it can serve as a valuable tool for maintaining connections, especially during times when in-person interactions are limited. And I will always be grateful for, I started virtual connection and free 15-minute calls as soon as COVID started. I just could see the value and the importance in connecting with people and being able to deal with mental health issues. And I will always make 15-minute calls my passion and my mission all the days of my life, because there's so much value in knowing there's someone out there for you that you can reach out to. So for those of you listening, if you would like to get on a 15-minute call just to make that connection to see if there's any way that I can help you or lead you to some supports, I'd be more than happy to do that. And that is, of course, the link is always at www.theocdcoach.com. And you can reach out to us to book a time that's suitable for you. Okay, and the self-compassion, always be kind and compassionate with yourself when feelings of isolation come upon you. Remind yourself it's natural to feel lonely at times, and you are deserving of love, support, and connection. And connection can come in many different ways, right? It doesn't have to be personal connection with some other person. It could be connecting with yourself, with your interests. And again, like we talked about, hobbies, activities that bring joy and fulfillment. Okay. And again, a form of distraction. The negative thoughts that we talked about earlier, these often lead to isolation because they are negative connotations. So let's talk about challenging our negative thoughts. Because the negative thoughts have such negative connotation, we begin to believe it. Things such as I'm not worthy of love or connection, or telling ourselves nobody understands what I'm going through. These are simply thoughts, and as disturbing as they are, they can change, and we can change our outlook on our thoughts. But first, we need to be aware and acknowledge them. And secondly, we need to replace those thoughts with more balanced and realistic alternatives. And coping strategies is one of the answers on how to be able to achieve that. And if you want to practice, now that we've gone through some of the mindfulness and some of the topics and titles of different mindfulness techniques, take a look online and Google and just explore different ones and practice them, and you will find which ones you're interested in. And always, if feelings of isolation persist and significantly impact your daily function and well-being, then it's time likely that you need to consider seeking support. And don't have shame about that. Often, here's my thought on that. When we need help and we need times of support because we're feeling isolated, And we feel that we have no other way out. It's times like that that we need to step up. And we need to look at reaching out for support is not a weakness, because often people feel it is a weakness. I look at reaching out. If you are considering reaching out to someone, such as myself as a coach, the reaching out part is not a weakness. It's actually a strength, because you recognize that you need support and remember you're worthy of it. So again, if you're interested in joining the private coach group on Facebook, you can find us on Facebook under OCD Private Coach website, the Facebook page, or the OCD Coach, and we will stay connected to inform you on your journey. And I always put my books out as well, because some people are readers. Some people want to learn more. This is a small book I started out with just to give people hope that there is hope in overcoming OCD. I am working on an anxiety book, so I don't have one right now to show you, but all the treatment modalities are the same. I use CBT and ERP in both OCD and anxiety. And the second book was my personal journey living with OCD and my transformation. I call it my vulnerability book, because I share all the negative thoughts and the OCD intrusive thoughts in this book, in hopes that other people who may have had similar thoughts, whether they live with OCD or anxiety, that they will feel that there is hope for them. And these books can be ordered directly on Amazon, and the links are on our website. And my third book is a co-author with my coach, James Melanchuk, here, and mentors Nick and Megan Unsworth. We all had an opportunity to put our thoughts on reaching our greatness into this book. So I was honored to do that. That book is only available on our website. All three reached Amazon #1 bestseller, so we're proud of that. And again, if anyone wants to use the barcode to scan for the 15-minute link, feel free to do so. So we can support you in various ways. I like to start sometimes with a 15-minute consult to get to know you a little bit. And here we have a webinar that I am doing on navigating the storm. And I'm going to be providing free tools for managing anxiety in today's world. And this is going to take place on April 9th at 6 p.m. Central Standard Time. So check your local times. I know last session we had with the gathering place, some people joined us at 8 p.m. So they were, despite it does show you what your local time is, but if you're uncertain, check and make sure that you're in the right time zone. It's Central Standard Time, and this will be the link that you can just hop on like you did tonight. And it's really important that you secure your spot in advance. So if it's something that you are interested in, please follow this link. Take a snapshot of it now. I'll leave it up for a moment. Follow that link to register, because we will have limited seating. So I want to make sure that everybody that is interested gets a chance to sign up. And then we will also have a exclusive opportunity on how ways you can work with me on a one-to-one as your coach, and at a reduced rate. And this will come on April 9th. So if you are going to attend, be sure to stay to the end so that you can see what the inclusive opportunity is. I've got a couple things that I'm going to offer. So I want to thank you. I want to thank you for your time, first and foremost, because everyone's time is precious. And the next session is on May 6th. So mark your calendar and make sure to change the date. The time, is 6 o'clock versus 7 Central. And the Zoom meeting link is always the same. And you can submit your questions at this link here. So if you want to take a moment to write down that ask your questions here form, I'll be happy to address the Q&A at our next session as well. And if you don't want to wait a whole month to get your questions answered, get on a 15-minute call and we can answer them there as well. So that leads us to, again, our website, www.theocdcoach.com, and our email is info@theocdcoach.com. So if there's something here tonight that you wanted further information on, or you just wanted some clarity, or you had concerns about the topic or what the responses were, don't hesitate to email me or even give me a call. And the local number is 204-295-4408. And follow us. Click and subscribe to YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, or TikTok. We'll be glad to have you as part of our group. So I always say I will meet you there. And the reason I say I'll meet you there is people feel very alone. And that is my kind of my branding. I always say I'll meet you there because you never should feel alone. There's always help out there for you. Okay. So I as your coach can help you towards a brighter, less anxious future. That's my mission. So thank you once again. If there's any other comments or chats, feel free to post them. Otherwise, I will say good night and I will meet you there.